So I was out here yesterday in this very spot with my lovely bride Liz, who wanted to learn some basic fire making techniques using a ferro rod. And it made me realize that the use of a ferro rod might not be as intuitive as I thought it was. She was having some trouble getting a good shower of sparks and getting consistent results. And so in today's video, that's what we're going over. So you might be asking yourself, why in the world would anybody carry one of these things when a lighter or matches are just so much easier? So first off, I do carry a lighter. I carry one every single day, and honestly, you can't beat them for getting a quick fire going. But there's a couple of problems with these things. They can run out of fuel, they can break, if they get wet, they just don't work. The thing with a ferro rod is it has none of those problems. It doesn't run out of fuel, it doesn't break, and it works in any weather condition, even if it's soaking wet. And so although I do carry a lighter every single day, I also always have a ferro rod in my pack. So the use of a ferro rod might seem very basic and very intuitive. You just scrape the thing, you get sparks, you light things on fire. And on one level, that's kind of true, but there are some definite techniques that you can employ that are going to make your ferro rod use much more efficient. So over the next few months, Liz is going to be learning some basic survival skills. So if you want to check that out, she's going to be posting that stuff over on her channel. I'll link to it in the description and also in this little card up here somewhere.
Oh, no!
There you go. So getting a fire going, of course, first starts with finding good tinder. So these are relatively challenging conditions. We've been getting a lot of rain, it's been cold and overcast, and we have high humidity right now. But the thing with fine fuels, like this grass, pine straw, pine boughs, fir needles, things like that, is that they change moisture content rapidly. You could go from a soaking downpour where everything is sopping wet to having these fine fuels like this be bone dry in under an hour in the right conditions. So if you do find yourself in conditions where all of your grasses and other fine fuels are too damp to catch a spark, you can create your own dry tinder by getting to the interior wood of a standing dead snag, or maybe you look underneath the conifer boughs and you can find a dry branch under there. You split that apart, expose that interior wood, and then you can shave, make very fine shavings with the blade of your knife, and that will catch a spark from a ferro rod. So the grass that I've collected here we're going to use as our tinder. It's definitely not bone dry, but with the proper ferro rod techniques, you can generate enough heat to dry this stuff out enough to catch a spark and take flame. And so the first thing that I'm going to want to do is fluff this up so that we've got a ton of surface area in there and a bunch of just little hair-like fibers. The best way to do that with this grass is just to take it like this and start working it like this. And you can work your way down the bundle, and that separates that straw into really fine fibers. So as I mentioned, the moisture content in this grass is relatively high for a fine fuel tinder because it has been raining, it's overcast, it's cold, and everything's just kind of damp right now. And so by fluffing it up like this and separating this straw into that finer hair-like structure, those things are gonna dry out much quicker when we start shooting sparks into this with our ferro rod. So I've kind of got it fluffed up a little bit. I'm just gonna make a ball out of that and just keep fluffing. Cedar bark is wonderful as well. From western red cedar or juniper bark works great. There's lots of different fuels, fine fuels that you can use as tinder. All right, I think we're good to go. We're gonna lay this on the ground. I'm gonna show you some techniques that are gonna make your ferro rod fires much easier. So I've got just a little small ferro rod here that we're going to be using. Doesn't have a handle. A handle on these things is going to make it much easier, or a larger rod. This is what I have, so this is what we're going to use today. Now, what you're doing to create sparks from this ferro rod is you're actually shaving material from the rod, and the friction caused by removing that material ignites it, and I don't remember how many degrees that stuff is, but something like 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. It's very, very hot. So to get good shavings off your ferro rod, you need a good, relatively sharp edge. The back side of my saw blade here has a 90-degree angle, and that allows me to shave that material off that ferro rod. If you're using a fixed blade knife, the spine of that knife needs to have a 90-degree edge on it versus being rounded off. So if you scrape a ferro rod lightly, you can generate some small sparks like that. And if you've got really good, perfect tenders, or maybe a Vaseline soaked cotton ball or a fire wick, you can get them going with just light sparks like that. But if you're dealing with less than perfect tender bundles, like the relatively damp grass that we have here, we're gonna have to generate a lot more heat than just these little fine sparks are. And so to generate that heat, what we're gonna have to do is take big shavings off of this thing. And that just takes more pressure and a relatively sharp edge on your tool. I'm actually using the saw blade, the back of the saw blade on my Leatherman here. Now you can see this is a light scrape, this is a heavy scrape. See, I'm shooting sparks for 3 feet past the camera there. Big, big difference in not only the number of sparks, how far they travel, how long they burn, and the heat that they generate, and that's the important part. So one other tip for generating additional heat in a stubborn tender bundle is that if you scrape lightly, you can actually scrape unburned ferro material off into your tender bundle. And then once you do shoot a spark in there, all of that stuff will ignite as well, and that can generate a lot of heat. I'll go ahead and just scrape a little bit off here and then ignite it, and you'll see it just popping all over the stump here. So the other little tip for creating a bunch of heat to dry out a stubborn tender bundle with one of these little ferro rods is just simply more sparks, more heavy sparks. And so the way that you do that is you can pin your tender bundle to whatever your surface is, and just heavy scrapes and lots and lots of them. All right, so I've got my tender bundle here worked up. It's nice and fluffy, a lot of little fine hairs in there. It's actually starting to kind of drizzle right now, starting to get some raindrops on the camera lens. But I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna use a couple of those techniques that I showed you. First, I'm gonna shave lightly some ferro dust into this thing. When you're doing this, you don't want to create sparks because you'll burn up all of the ferro dust that you just created, so be careful about that. If you look down in this hole, you can start to see that dust collecting in there. So once I start shooting sparks in there, all that stuff's going to ignite as well. All right, so I'm just going to pin my rod against this, and I'm just gonna start shooting sparks in there, and I'm gonna keep on until I see a flame. It shouldn't take too awful long, I don't think. Once I get a flame, you turn your tender bundle over, and all of that heat goes up into the tender bundle and really gets it going. Now, of course, if I wanted to build a fire, I would have my other fire materials here. I'd have a big bunch of kindling, a little bit heavier stuff, and then of course my bulk firewood. So with loose tenders like this, if you're scraping in this way, it can be easy to just kind of knock your tinder all over the place. So oftentimes if you're dealing with loose tenders, it's better to just place your scraper down and then move the ferro rod against that. So a couple takeaways from this quick little video. Number one is there are definite techniques that will make your ferro rod use much more efficient and make it much easier to get fires going with a ferro rod. So another takeaway is that pressure is your friend. You need pressure so that you can shave those big heavy shavings off of that ferro rod and into your tinder bundle. Those heavy shavings are going to burn hotter, they're going to last longer, and they're going to generate more heat. And for stubborn tinders, that's exactly what you need. And then of course, just get into a position where you can just crank on that thing and just shoot sparks continuously into your tinder bundle until that thing takes flame. Now the only way that you're going to be able to do that is to have a tinder bundle that is not going to fall apart. So if you're having to deal with tinders that are loose, like the shavings that I showed, it can make generating a bunch of sparks like that much more difficult because you're having to place your striker down and just pull your striker against that. And so techniques like shaving the ferro dust into that and creating really fine shavings is going to help out a lot with that. All right guys, I hope that was helpful. If you don't have a ferro rod, go ahead and grab one so that you'll have it with you. Get out there and practice with it. Just practice making those big heavy shavings and light some fires. We'll see y'all on the next one.